and on IHOD.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to take a few minutes with the body and explain the rules that you have before you and how they differ from last year's rules. And then if I could just get through everything, and I think from there we'll proceed with questions. I'm sure people have some. So first, the pronouns and other references in the rules are in the feminine gender. New Rule 86 highlights and interprets the use of the feminine gender in the rules. It states, any word in these rules used in the feminine includes the masculine and neuter. Next, when applicable, the word will replaces the word shall throughout the rules. This is a practice that has been used started to be used by legislative services, and is a new drafting that's often used by attorneys. The last two paragraphs of Rule 2 concerning an absence of the speaker or a vacancy in the position have changed from previous versions. Under the 2018-2019 rules, if a speaker were absent, the speaker's duties would be performed by the chairman of the Committee on Privileges and Elections. If the speaker's position were vacant during a regular or special session, the House would elect a successor. If the speaker's position were vacant during the interim, the Committee on Privileges and Elections will elect a speaker to serve until a successor was elected by the House at its next session. Under the new rules, if the speaker is absent and has named no one to act in her stead, the House Majority Leader will serve as speaker. If the speaker's position is vacant during the regular or special session, the House Majority Leader will serve as speaker pro tempore until the House has elected a successor. If the Majority Leader is unable or unwilling to assume the speaker's duties when she is absent or there is a vacancy, the duties of the speaker will be performed by a member of the Majority Caucus of the Committee of Rules, taking precedence in the order named by the speaker. If the speaker's position is vacant during the interim, the Committee on Rules will elect a speaker who will serve until a successor is elected by the House at its next session. Now, just the word hall that was throughout the rules is now replaced with the word chamber. That's the way we refer to this room, so it's House Chamber. Rule 6B states that the seat or office space occupied by a member re-elected will not change absent the member's consent, except that members will be moved left or right by the clerk to maintain contiguity in dividing the chamber along major party caucuses. Now, the 2018-2019 rules did not mention the clerk moving seats to the left or right to maintain the contiguous nature of the caucuses. While there has been no disruption by any member of this custom and practice, at least in my memory in recent past, we thought it was wise to put the practice that we have into the rules. On Rule 16, the membership of the Committee of Appropriations is 22, whereas it was 24 in the 2018-2019 rules. It always has been 22 rules. I think what happened is that number 24 was left from previous time when there was a power sharing arrangement, so it's a cleanup. Now we come to committee names. The committee that was known as Militia, Police, and Public Safety will now be the Public Safety Committee. The committee that was known as Science and Technology Committee will now be the Communications, Technology, and Innovations Committee. And also Commerce and Labor will be called Labor and Commerce. Rule 16 provides that the membership of the Committee on Rules is 17 plus the Speaker. We just added one more. The previous rule was 16. Rule 16A maintains the same method of apportionment for members in standing committees and subcommittees as in effect in the 2018-2019 rules, with the exception of the Committee on Rules. Under Rule 17A, the chairman of any standing committee may serve as an ex officio member of a subcommittee and may vote on that subcommittee, provided that only if a member of the majority caucus is absent when the question is before the committee, and that's to protect the balance of power. The Rule 20 The 2018-2019 rules under Rule 18 spoke to the use of select committees and subjects that could be directed for study by the select committees. The 2020-2021 rules did not explicitly mention select committees. In fact, the prior year's rules actually prohibited select committees. Rule 20 of the 2018-2019 rules authorized chairs of standing committees to hire additional citizens for such purposes, but did not require the speaker's approval. We thought it would be prudent to make sure that there is some approval process to make sure that we are not throwing or going into expenses that are not warranted. So now, Rule 20 authorizes a chairman of a standing committee with the speaker's approval to hire or engage additional clerks, counsel, and other staff personnel to review legislation or perform duties. Rule 23A provides that the House Committee on Rules will establish a formal policy for the training, reporting, investigating, and resolving of issues of harassment on the basis of race, sex, color, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity of expression, age, or against other qualified persons with disabilities that extends to the public and to the persons engaged with and employed by the legislative branch. Rule 81 of the rules of 2018-2019 stated that the rules would remain in effect for 2 years, coinciding with the terms of members. This is just we changed the language, but it still has the same meaning. That now it says the rules will remain in effect upon adoption and coinciding with the terms of the members. The new Rule 85 states that it is the policy of the Virginia House of Delegates to take all reasonable precautions to ensure the safety of every member, full and part-time employee, page, intern, visitor, and guest of the Virginia House of Delegates. It provides that in keeping with such commitment, the House Committee on Rules, by a majority vote, will establish a formal policy on the ability of members, staff, guests, and visitors to bring firearms into the areas under the legal authority of the House of Delegates. Madam Speaker, I move adoption of the resolution, but I do believe that there may be line amendments.
Madam Speaker.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Madam Speaker, I rise for a purpose of a question.
Delegate Gilbert.
Will the Majority Leader yield for a question?
Will Delegate Herring yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Yes, you will.
Madam Speaker, I would just ask the delegate, first of all, as to Rule 18, which would eliminate the prohibition on select committees that are undertaking subject matter within the purview of a standing committee. Would the delegate just explain to me the purpose of that further, in the sense of why? I know she has stated what it does. I guess I'm wondering why the majority would intend to do that.
Well, I'll give the minority leader. I'm sorry. I'm going to give the delegate some background. Madam Speaker, if I may respond.
Yes, Delegate Herring.
Madam Speaker, we simply deleted the restriction on the appointment of the select committee. If the members remember, 2 years ago, after the Parkland shooting, then Speaker Cox did appoint a select committee. However, our rules prohibited a select committee to be established. And so we thought it was important to just go ahead and delete that restriction. Should an occasion happen, that select committee needs to be appointed. And I want people to, if those members who have been here, this happened late in session, that shooting, and the speaker indicated that we did not have enough time for the standing committee to address the urgent issues at hand. So this will allow, if there is a desire to have a select committee, which is not anticipated, that will allow the flexibility without violating the rules.
Madam Speaker.
Delegate Gilbert.
Will the delegate yield for another question?
Will the delegate yield?
Yes, I will.
The delegate will yield. Delegate
And I
Gilbert.
appreciate that response, and certainly we considered that we had previously established a select committee for, which was historic in nature. It had not been done before. I think in 150 years, we had not had a select committee to simply debate a single issue. In this case, the issue was that of school safety. And because it was so unique, so historic, of such magnitude and importance that we needed to do it, am I hearing correctly from the delegate that the majority would intend to limit this power to such unique, historic moments, or would this be become more of a routine way of getting around perhaps the standing committees?
Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would respond to the delegate that this side of the aisle recognizes that we have committees of jurisdiction, and when things that need to be properly placed in committees of jurisdiction, that's what we will do. And yes, it would be a unique situation, just like we had that shooting. It was toward the end of session, and it is not anticipated that we will start establishing select committees willy-nilly, but it would have to rise to such a level.
Madam Speaker, will the delegate yield for another question?
Will the delegate yield? Will the delegate yield?
Yes.
Thank
The
you,
delegate will yield.
Thank you, Madam
Delegate
Speaker.
Gilbert.
Madam Speaker, I would ask the delegate, and I appreciate the response, and I appreciate that the majority intends to limit the use of this power to extremely limited circumstances, maybe once every 150 years or so. But I would just point out and ask the delegate if she would confirm for me that that Rule 16A, as to the proportional representation on committees and subcommittees, that only applies to standing committees of the House and not to any such select committee. Would that be correct if we were to have a select committee again?
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will respond to the delegate. If you look at the four corners of the document, that would say that, but I would also tell the delegate that it has been within our spirit that we have proportionality within the rules, and I would anticipate that there would be proportionality with the select committee.
Delegate Gilbert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And would the delegate yield for one more question?
Will the delegate yield?
Happy to. Thank you.
Delegate will yield.
So I suppose this is just mainly by way of thanking the delegate for being forthcoming and honest, and wanted to have this discussion, Madam Speaker, on the floor and have her respond on behalf of your caucus. And I suppose with that, I don't necessarily have a question now that I think about it, but I do appreciate her honesty in responding. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Gilbert. The clerk will report the floor amendments.
Floor amendment, House Resolution 17 by Delegate Gilbert, dealing with Rule 2. This is available on iHod, and if you need a hard copy, it's available in the copy room at the back.
Madam Speaker.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Marcus Simon.
Madam Speaker, parliamentary inquiry, I think that maybe Delegate Warren was about to get to. Is the clerk going to read at least a short line about what the amendment is? No. Okay. Madam Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Delegate Orrock.
Would the clerk be able to read the line number to where the amendment would be applicable?
Delegate Orrock, the clerk will read the line item of the floor amendment.
Line 25, introduced after strike all of the lines 25 through 58 and insert. And then there is new language.
Delegate from Fairfax County, Delegate Simon.
Rise for motion.
Delegate Simon.
I move that the amendment be passed by.
All those in favor?
Excuse me, Madam Speaker.
Delegate Gilbert?
I rise to speak to the motion.
Delegate Gilbert. you have the floor.
Speaking to the motion, Madam Speaker, normally I think we would have at least afforded our colleagues the opportunity to say what their amendment does before we dispatched it. But if that is to be the practice that we are not afforded such opportunity, I would simply say that in speaking to the motion to pass by the amendment that apparently no one knows what it does yet because it hasn't been read, and I'm not putting that on the clerk, but there appeared to be some confusion over there. So before we pass by the motion, I would just simply like to advise the members what the motion does. The motion would pass by an amendment that essentially restores us to the previous method of dealing with a vacancy in the speakership, which would have been to avoid putting the speakership in a political position. Of course, Majority Leader, and I have no doubt that my colleague, who is the Majority Leader at the moment, could handle herself quite well in the role. However, we have relied on this process, I think, primarily out of a sense of history, and the history is that from my understanding, Privileges and Elections is among the, if not the oldest standing committee in this body, and it has the weight of that history behind it, and so we have entrusted this this responsibility to P&E if there is a vacancy, and that has worked just fine. It has kept the politics of a leadership position out of that and put it in the hands of a respected and austere committee, and I'm certain that the committee now established by Madam Speaker would likewise be able to handle such a vacancy were it to occur. So that's what the motion to pass by would do, is eliminate our ability to vote on that amendment and restore the previous procedure and the reasons therefore. So I would ask the members to oppose the motion to pass by.
Thank you, Delegate Gilbert. Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, with less than 2 minutes, I think, to explain, I understand certainly the delegate from Shenandoah's concerns and adherence to tradition and practice. As I think we said yesterday, there's a lot of traditions and practices that have gone by the wayside these last couple of days. This is part of a theme in these rules, is to put into the rules what is in fact the modern practice and what has actually been happening. Typically when the speaker vacates their seat, as long as I've been here, and I know it hasn't been that long, the majority leader steps up and takes that seat. These are temporary appointments. This is in the instance of a vacancy. We're just talking about who takes over for 3 to 7 days until an election can be held for a new speaker. So this isn't something that's going to go on forever. We also felt that rather than going by the list in Rule 16, the order of chairman, that the Rules Committee was a more reflective place of the leadership structure and what people would sort of assume was the first, second, and third in command as far as that goes. And that was the purpose behind the amendment. I would encourage members on this side of the aisle and a couple over there to please vote yes to the motion to pass by.
Madam Speaker, would the gentleman yield for purposes of a question?
Delegate Orrock, Delegate Fairfax, Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon, will you yield?
Do we have enough time? If we have enough time,
Do we still have,
Madam
I think we've got about 10 seconds.
Speaker, I yield for a quick question.
What would, in fact, this new rule change have negated the fact that Delegate Putney ascended to the speakership upon the resignation of Delegate Wilkins, and the alternative with this rule is Delegate Griffith would have been our new speaker. Would that be correct?
Madam Speaker, I'd answer
Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, I would answer the delegate that I wasn't there at the time, but I would take his word for it that that's how it would have worked.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the amendment, of the motion to pass by amendment, we'll say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay. All those in favor of the motion to pass by shall record your vote in the electronic.
Madam Speaker.
Yes. Delegate from Arlington, Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if a member wanted to vote to pass by this amendment, that member would vote yes on the board. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
All those in favor to pass by, say vote on your electronic voting board. Vote yes. The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45. Vote to pass by passes. The clerk will report the next amendment.
Second amendment offered by Delegate Gilbert to House Resolution 17, dealing with